You should think about doing things globally, or you should act locally. So if you're an Indian entrepreneur, you have to think about making your best customer your first customer.
Well agreed.
But what people do is they will try to make their first customer the fastest customer. If I imagine my own sort of growing up, right, of let's say playing cricket on the streets. Today, there are probably people who come with their own kit. When we were growing up, one guy bought the bat, other kid bought the ball, one guy bought one stump, other guy bought the other stump, one guy got the middle stump, other guy got the bails.
And you played in the road.
Right? Either played on the road,
Yeah.
right? And if the wicketkeeper didn't show up, the wall behind you was a wicketkeeper.
Yeah, even I remember doing that too.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, the idea of you owning an entire cricket set or entire cricket bat didn't exist, right? And I could only afford a ball, right? And that was maybe like one ball, and then after the leather strip, then you put it inside a tennis ball, and you play with tennis cricket and so on, right? And the other kid probably just had a bat, right? What it does is, and thinking back, right? One of the things you think about is like, what does that teach you? One is, actually it teaches you tremendous amount of respect in having accountability. If the guy with the bat doesn't show up on time, you can't start the game. If the 3 stumps are not there, yes, you could work with 2 stumps, right? But you never know if the middle stump, took off if you're a pace bowler, right? That teamwork and collaboration of respecting people, right? Where if the guy didn't bring your guard, there was going to be a problem.
True.
So it forces people to say, hey, show up on time, collaborate, own something, doesn't matter what it is, right? And those were great times, right? And you really didn't care about what type of bat it was or whatever. You had one, maybe 2 bats on each on a side, and you would play, right? Because we were more concerned about the technique.
True.
We were more concerned about being specific and intentional about the game you played. The same thing applies to entrepreneurship as well. So I don't prefer entrepreneurs who go out and raise millions of dollars. Millions of dollars corrupts how you think and how you execute. So when you have too much of something, you don't know the value of it.
True.
And that is what you learn, right, from growing up in India, is this idea of frugal innovation and the ability to use constraints as a key ingredient to grow. And I can't go without saying, perhaps in my first 5 minutes, this is what DeepSeek today has taught us.
Absolutely. That's a very valid example. The world was awestruck by what has happened.
Not because they had more stuff, it's because they didn't have stuff.
They didn't have
It's because they did not have access to the latest chips, because they didn't have access to that kind of money.
Well agreed. Well agreed.
Right? So now an entire nation is panicking because now what was considered a backward nation 30 years ago, right,
Is
now
much ahead.
is a forefront
Much ahead.
of AI, perhaps. Now it has its sets of issues as well. Now the question is, what does it mean for India, right? And we should talk about what does it mean for India, because we do have frugal innovation, but you can't take that too far.
True.
The nuance is that if you take frugal innovation too far, you don't think too big.
Well agreed.
Because the good aspects about it, but there are also downsides to it. And the reason is, again, cultural. There's only one Vidyarthi Bhavan. You go there, right, at 11:30, you will not get your favorite dosa because he's done with it. Okay? That's a different type of a model where you're focused on longevity and sustainability, right, of a business that won't scale, right? You can only have one Vidyarthi Bhavan right, with the same lovely masala dosa that they give you. But if he finishes with my favorite, which is sagu dosa, that ends. You come 5 minutes late, it doesn't matter how much wealth you have or who you want to pay, you're not getting your favorite dosa. Okay?
True.
That level of contentment is good for certain aspects, right, of life, but doesn't apply for entrepreneurs that want to take things at a global scale.
So you mean to say that these values, what we imbibe in the Indian culture, the frugality to all these things, also influence us a lot from our roots to the global entrepreneurship metrics?
They not only influence you, right, in fundamental ways, you have to always you should have two conflicting thoughts in your mind at all times.
Okay.
And they should fight. That's why I have a concept we talked about earlier called you have to be politely confrontational in your mind. And a good example of it is you should think about doing things globally, or you should act locally.
Think global, act local. We
Right.
all have been following it.
But there's a nuance to it. The nuance is when you start day zero, okay, you shouldn't think about selling the local kirana store or selling it to a local company. You should think about, what would it take a Microsoft or General Motors or a Cisco, right, to be my first customer?
The value what you're trying to bring in there.
Because if you sell to a Fortune 1 or Fortune 2 company, the requirements that they're going to have is going to be vastly different, right, than a company here locally. So if you're an Indian entrepreneur, you have to think about making your best customer your first customer.
Will agree.
But what people do is they will try to make their first customer the fastest customer,
Lot of difference.
which greatly minimizes their opportunity. There's an opportunity cost. Again, there's a counterpoint to it. The counterpoint to it is if you make Walmart, which is the world's largest customer, your first customer, or JP Morgan Chase, the world's largest bank, your first customer, there's a price you have to pay for it, which is you as a startup founder are going to be a slave to that customer because they're going to make unrealistic demands on this little startup that you're going to pour your heart and soul into it for perhaps very little money or sometimes no money. And then sometimes, if you don't deliver, they will chew you and spit you out and you will have nothing to show for it.